Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of Maid, Catacombs of the Moon from American Mythology. So this is a three-issue miniseries, and this is part of American Mythology's Edgar Rice Burroughs line of comics. Edgar Rice Burroughs, of course, created Tarzan and John Carter of Mars, and American Mythology puts out comics of some of his lesser-known properties like Maid. And so just to start with the title, Maid is an old-timey way of saying woman. So instead of calling her Moon Woman, they say Moon Maid. She's actually a princess, and the moon in the title is referring to a world inside of the moon called Vanos. It's actually, the moon is hollow in the novels, and so there is this fantastic primitive world called Vanos, which, people are struggling to survive in, and that is where this takes place. And so let's start off talking about the covers for the miniseries. So this is the first issue's cover, and I've already reviewed the first issue individually and went on at length about some of my issues with this cover. While it is rendered beautifully, I love the colors, I love, the way her face is done and all this stuff. The storytelling here and the design work is just not that good. This is a very off-model version of her outfit, and it just looks sleazy and tacky and doesn't all reflect what it looks like inside. And I just don't know quite what's supposed to be going on in this cover. She doesn't look like she knows how to hold a sword, and this guy, I'm still not sure what he's doing. I've been looking at this thing for months. I still think he's trying to hunt a small animal in this bush right here. I don't know what's going on in this cover. However, that was not the only option on covers. So this is artwork that was used to promote the miniseries, and this is actually available as a cover. And at first I had an issue. Actually, I thought this was brilliant. I love the energy, I love the action in it, I love the color. The only issue I had that kind of made me like, was that her outfit is so different from what you see inside of the comic. But as I was reviewing the first issue, I did some research and found out that this is basically a version of the way it's described in the novel. This is closer to what Burroughs described her wearing than that kind of weird plunging neckline that they're giving her in the interiors of the comics. So I was like, okay, now I'm cool with that. So I went ahead and special ordered this cover so I could get it and have something I was more satisfied with for the first issue's cover. Unfortunately, this over here is how the cover actually turned out. And as you can see, they tried to redo it to give her this plunging neckline, but what they did was just really weird. They just seemed to have erased random lines to try to give her that neckline, and I won't say it ruins the cover, but it definitely diminishes it, and is very disappointing. My eye is just drawn right there to that part that they altered, and they just could have done that a lot better. The second issue also had two covers, and this is the variant cover. Actually, I like the main cover as well for the second issue. It's very nice. It has her like slicing some tentacles. But this is my preferred cover for issue 2, and it's absolutely gorgeous with these creatures surrounding her and her like plunging into the water with her knife ready to defend herself. The only weird thing is like the way they did the straps is kind of weird and distracting. And I think a little bit off model, but it's a very minor gripe about an otherwise just gorgeous cover. How many underwater covers are there? It's just kind of cool to own something that looks like this. And this is the final cover, and this is a really solid cover. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. The face is rendered differently, than she normally is rendered in the comics, but the artist, it looks like they just had a different inspiration or different model that they used for the face, and that's fine, because other than that, this looks like Maid. This looks like exactly like she should look like. She looks tough, she looks defiant, she's in the jungle on her home planet. It's a good cover. I like it. I do wish they did painted covers for Moon Maid, but that's kind of rare. But I think it really works because that's just what we associate with like the Burroughs novels. We associate picking up a Burroughs novels and seeing a painted cover, seeing Joe Jusko or Frank Frazetta or somebody like that on the cover. And obviously it works very well. This is actually the first one shot they put out of Moon Maid. And I bring this up not just to show you this wonderful cover, which is like one of my favorite covers that's been done probably ever, but also to point out that this is actually the beginning of the story that goes into this miniseries. So the story is very simple. It is basically the princess, whose name is Nahila, is bored. She's, kind of cooped up in her castle and all this stuff. And so she wants to go out and see the world. And so she persuades this hunter to take her out on a hunt. And things go wrong. They get captured. They get chased. They get captured again, chased. It's a Burroughs novel. Stuff happens. So there's a lot of monsters. There's a lot of evil men. It's just some really cool stuff. And so it begins right here in this one shot. Do you have to read this one shot? No. They do every effort to orient you in that miniseries. There is a great explanation of everything that's going on in the first issue. However, it's only one issue. There are only 4 issues of Moon Maid that American Mythology put out, and this is a good one. So if you're going to pick up the miniseries, I recommend just going ahead and getting this one shot. This was part of Fear on Four Worlds, so it may be under Fear on Four Worlds Moon Maid, or it may be Moon Maid #1. It just depends on how people listed it. So the artwork in this comic is done by Gabriel Riarte, and it's kind of a mixed bag. He renders the monsters quite well. I love his monsters, and of course Burroughs has some of the best monsters in his science fiction stuff. However, the artwork is inconsistent. I mean, sometimes the storytelling is beautiful, sometimes it's awkward here, in a panel here and there, and sometimes Moon Maid, Nyla, is drawn quite well, and she looks great, and other times it can be a little rough. The story is by Christopher Mills, who perfectly captures the pacing and suspense of Edgar Rice Burroughs, and he just really channels it well. It is a simple story, but it is one that can be told in 3 issues and be satisfying and give you a beginning, middle, and end. And one thing he did do in the miniseries, he did not do in that one shot I was showing you guys, is that it does explain why it's called Moon Maid. It explains about the world being inside of the moon and everything. That was one of my few criticisms of that one shot, was that there was no explanation as to what Vanos was. So, you could get to the end of that one shot and you would be like, why is it called Moon Maid? But here, right off the bat, he does explain it and just gets into the action. Again, orients you to that one shot and just like goes into the action, and it's a straight shot of just a lot of really cool stuff. I love the ending. I'm not going to show you anything from the inside of the 3rd issue. I don't want to spoil it, but I loved it. It was really cool. And so overall, I would recommend this mini-series. $4 a pop is a very steep price for a modern comic, especially when, the pacing is the way it is in a modern comic. But I would say that if you're a fan of Burroughs and at all intrigued with this property, there's only 4 comics that are specifically devoted to the Moon Maid and the Moon Trilogy. And so just owning those is well worth the money, and especially when they're a good read. Even if the artwork's a little mixed, overall it's a good package, and I recommend it. And when you read this, if you become intrigued by it, this is actually a prequel to Burroughs' novels. And so the premise of the novels is, like I said, there's a world inside the moon. And of course, the first novel is an Earthman crashes on the moon, somehow gets inside of it. I haven't read it. That must be a very interesting adventure. But so he ends up inside of the moon, has some adventures, rescues a princess. You know the drill. But the other novels kind of put a twist on it, and the Moon Men actually come to Earth and conquer the Earth. So it's actually, I believe it's the Moon Men that I've read. Some people consider to be Burroughs' finest work. So that's very intriguing. As far as comics go, I don't think there is actually any other comics, put out based on the novels. There is a comic strip on Edgar Rice Burroughs' website, and you can actually subscribe, and it's a comic strip adapting the original novels. So that actually looks really good. I haven't done the subscription because I got so much other stuff to read, but it does look very good. Or you can just go and get the original novels. They're cheap, or you can get them for free because they're in the public domain, I believe. And there is one comic book crossover with Tarzan that doesn't feature the Moon Men, and it is Tarzan versus the Moon Men by Dark Horse Comics. This was back in the 90s, and this was a really, really cool miniseries. I highly recommend it. It actually is a sequel to the novels and actually has Tarzan helping try to free Africa from the aliens, and it's freaking awesome. As far as what's next for the Edgar Rice Burroughs comics from American Mythology, this is hitting stores next week in time for Halloween. This is The Monster Men. And I've been seeing this ad in my comics that I've been getting from them, but I thought this was just a horror comic because they put out a lot. Mike Wolfer writes a lot of horror comics. But if you look down here at the bottom, it is actually based on an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel. He did put out a novel called The Monster Men, and basically there's a scientist that tries to create artificial humans on an island, and of course things go wrong in the novel, and this is a authorized sequel to it. This is going to be a one-shot, but it will lead into a mini-series that they'll put out later. That will follow up on that novel. So that's really cool. I didn't spot this until just a couple days ago, so hopefully my comic shop can order it for me and I can get it next week. If not, I'm going to review it whenever I get this because I'm very intrigued by this. I'm not familiar with this property at all, so it definitely looks cool. Just a word of advice to, whoever's putting together these ads. I normally expect, something about this being part of the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe to be at the top. By the time I got to the bottom, I very rarely make it all the way to the bottom as far as when I'm reading an ad. So probably putting something that important down at the bottom is not the best idea because I would have ordered this months ago if I'd seen that. And then next month, Pellucidar Wings of Death will wrap up. And so this, I've already reviewed the first issue of it, but it is excellent. This has the best artwork that we've seen in the Edgar Rice Burroughs comics from American Mythology. And it's got a really, really great story. Highly recommend this. Then after that, in January, there will be a Carson of Venus miniseries. And this one's going to be a little different because it is going to lead into a series of novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated that will tell an interconnected story across Edgar Rice Burroughs' universe. And so it's going to have Tarzan novel, John Carter novel, Pellucidar, Carson of Venus, and they're even going to introduce a new character named Victory Harden who will have her own novel. And she will actually first appear in that Carson of Venus comic in a backup story. So that's really exciting. I definitely would recommend going ahead and reserving your copy. Go ahead and order it from your local comic shop. And so that's it. Like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.